So, welcome to today's show, guys. Today we've got a guest, Kristin Beale, who's an author, illustrator, and she's got 3 books currently out, with the 4th on its way. She's had a difficult past in some respects, and I'm sure we'll come to talk about that as we go through. So, welcome to the show, Kristin.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So, if you just want to tell the guests a bit about yourself, obviously we've given a brief introduction there, and then we can obviously get stuck in.
So my name is Kristin, and I've had a difficult story, but a story that I'm very thankful for, and that has really shaped me. So when I was 14 years old, I was it was in a well. Do you want me to launch into this part?
Yeah.
Okay. When I was 14 years old, I was in a jet ski accident with 3 of my friends. We were at Lake Gaston in North Carolina, and one of our jet skis collided into the other one. So my friends who were driving the jet ski collided into me and my friend Mark, who was driving mine, and he fell forward and died on impact. And I was turning around like, what is that noise? Stop. And it hit me on the left side of my brain for a traumatic brain injury and the middle of my back for a spinal cord injury. I fell in the water face first. I was supposed to die, I was face first, and then I flipped over. I was unconscious, and I was supposed to die. I was supposed to not be able to breathe or talk or swallow, be a vegetable, and all this stuff the doctors predicted. But I made it, and I didn't die. And my let's see, I was in North Carolina in the hospital, Pitt Memorial Hospital, for about a month. Excuse me. And then I was flown back to my home city of Richmond, Virginia, where I stayed in the hospital for about 3 more months. In that, while I was there, the doctor said she's living and she's starting to breathe on her own. She's starting to wake up a little bit, but she'll be a vegetable when she wakes up. And it's not really, things are not looking good for you, for your daughter. They were telling my parents this because I was in a coma. So let's see. That happened on August 2005, about 17 years ago. And in this October of 2005, I started to wake up, despite what my doctor said. I started to wake up and come to, and I had short-term memory loss for a couple months, but I was awake and I was alive. So I started working hard to get out of the hospital. My parents said, my doctors told my parents, she's never going to feel or move below her injury level again, which is T8, right in the middle of my torso. So my parents said, yes, you will. Like, there's hope for her. We'll figure this out. Don't tell us no. And so, which is the best thing I could have done, because they told me they're saying you're not going to be able to feel or move below your injury level. We think there's hope out there. So work as hard as you can to get out of this hospital so we can, go off to California, which I'll get to in a second. And so I got out, I worked hard, and I got out on December 5th of 2005. And on January 1st, I was landing in California, Carlsbad, California, to work out at a place called Project Walk, which is like 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, working out to get feeling and sensation back. And I came back and I could wiggle my toes. So I've been back there 8 times since then. I've been to Dominican Republic for stem cells. I've been around the world for therapy. And that's where I am today, which I can get to, but I'll take a little break for a second to let you talk.
So that sounds like the start of your story then, doesn't it? In respect to you're on holiday, you've been involved in this jet ski incident where the person that you're with, I think Matthew was his name, Mark, died on impact, and you're here, huge issues in terms of in a coma, not being able to walk, etc. And if we then fast forward to today, and we'll fill in the gaps as we go through in terms of you authoring books, etc. If we fast forward to today and we see a complete sort of situation from where there was no hope, the doctors were saying X, Y, and Z. And today, if you just want to tell everyone sort of where you're at today in terms of relationships and things like that.
It was a very, very much before and after. Before, of course, I was 14. and below, and then after 15 and above. But it was a complete, just speaking of the physical, and the physical part is very different, of course, because I'm paralyzed in one, I'm not paralyzed in the other. But it was a complete mental perspective change. So who I was before my accident was a young, carefree, life is easy, life is great. You know, my priorities are, you know, dating a boy and going to prom, versus after my priorities are very much different. I was very pushed into maturity at a very young age, which I'm thankful for. And I have a different perspective, very different, and very one that was acquired from a way that I would never wish on anyone, but I'm very thankful for it. And today I'm very focused. After my accident, I'm very focused on health is a big thing for me. And I'm very focused on like just a completely different, it kind of changed my passions, and it changed who I am and how I look at things and how I treat people. And that's who I am today. But physically, I have the new motivation. I have this new, how do we call it? Like project. I'm calling it a project, my body, to get feeling and sensation back. So when I was first hurt, I was a complete injury, which means no feeling and no sensation below my injury. Good luck, you know, have a good time in the wheelchair. And then after all my working out and my eating right and my being healthy, I was able to get back, you know, a long list of things. And I have a long list of feelings and sensations. I can crawl. I graduated college and high school on a walker. I can like move my butt and my toes. I can feel pressure. Bladder sensation is coming back, you know, and more. And so it's very much like I see this thing that they tell me that I can never have, and I'm just reaching to have it. And I'm seeing how possible it is. And that's just amazing. And that's just the power of, you know, God and working hard and believing in something and never giving up. And so that's really changed a lot of how I carry myself.
So you seem to have overcome a lot of things there in terms of throughout the accident and beyond. So what does life look like for you today then? Obviously, we talked about the fact that you're an illustrator and an author, and obviously I know that you're trying to build a family as well. So if you just want to talk about that, because I think that will give a real good contrast really from where you came from such a position of sort of darkness and pain to today where, as you said, you know, you're in a really good space. So if you just want to explain exactly where you are today, and then we can fill in the gaps as in terms of how that progressed for you as a person, how that progressed in terms of your friends, etc., and taking it from there.
Okay. Well, we have the darkness and pain of my accident, and then we have today, 17 years later, I am the happiest person I've ever met in my life. Me and my husband live out in the country of Virginia, and I have almost 4 books coming out. The 4th one is coming out next month or very soon. And I have done 16 marathons. I'm a wheelchair fencer, parafencer. I have a baby coming in April, and that's very exciting. So I'm growing my family. I have a beautiful dog that is in the spotlight of all of my everything I do, because she's been my world for so long. You know, house, husband, baby, dog, books. I'm happy. I'm the happiest person. Life is good.
Such an inspiration, really, to be someone who has come through that situation to where you are today. And you talked about doing marathons and fencing, etc. There's people who are physically able who sit on the sofa and watch Netflix 6 hours a day. So I think it takes a lot of courage and a lot of endurance, discipline, focus to be able to pick yourself up and say, do you know what? I'm not going to let any of this affect me. I'm actually going to build my ideal life anyway, which you've managed to do, which is fantastic. What perspective change have you got since your accident? So obviously we spoke off air about this last time in terms of friends, how you view society in general, how you judge people in general. Can you talk a little bit about how that's changed over time?
So before my accident, I was lacrosse, field hockey, competition cheerleading, very active, surrounded by friends, had a lot going for me. And then my accident happened, and I lost a lot of friends because we were young, we were immature. It's fine. I seemingly lost all my sports because adaptive sports weren't really big at the time. They weren't really popular. So I had no idea that there was a such thing as adaptive sports back then. And I kind of lost everything. And I went through, it was brief, but it was still there. I went through a time where I was just not happy and I was just kind of like lost. I feel like I had like lost myself with this disability. And I didn't like that, of course. So I told myself, like, what do I need to do to be happy? What do I need to do to work myself back into this happiness that I had before my accident, or something close to it, something that looks kind of like it. And so it's just ever since then, that's why I've put all these things in my life that I know make me happy, like the hand cycling, for example, with the marathons. That makes me extremely happy. Finishing a marathon, working hard, and actually doing something that someone can look at and say, wow, that's really cool. I could never do that. As opposed to looking at me and saying, oh, you can't walk or you can't feel your feet. Looking at me and being impressed versus looking at me and feeling pity. It's not all about what other people think, but it's kind of what I think of myself of I can't do this versus, oh, well, look what I'm doing. So just that, for example, and then, you know, my dog and my husband and all this other, my books, all this other stuff that's in my life is what I've put there, is what I've made happen so that I can be happy, because I know that that's what I need. So it's not accepting the perspective. Coming back to your question, the perspective is like, I don't want to be happy. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to be focused on what I can't do and what has happened to me, the tragedy that's happened. So I like flip that around and make myself, you know, take care of myself and do what I need to do to be a happy person. And that's kind of simple. I'm simplifying it a lot, but that's what it boils down to. And that's why I have all this good stuff going for myself, because I work hard. I either work hard to get it, or I make sure that I can put it in my life, because that's what I need to be a happy, functioning person.
Well, you mentioned losing yourself. I think it's sometimes the case that we need to lose ourselves, don't we, to be able to find ourselves and to say, well, who do I want to be? What do I want to do? Is that what led you down the route of writing books? Is that a conscious question you asked yourself, or was that something that sort of just happened to an extent?
So I never wrote. I never knew I liked to write. Never knew I was good at it, anything. But when I was a sophomore in high school, I'm sorry, yeah, when I was a junior in high school, when I came back to school after being in the hospital, I took a creative writing class because it was an easy A, and you know the teacher can't really give you a bad grade for being creative, you know. And I needed something easy at the time, and then I realized that I like to write and I'm good at it, and I have all these things in my life that are new, and then I'm in process and writing them down to help me process them. And so that's, shoot, I forgot your question. But then that's like, okay, so that's how I like found that passion. And then I started to write to remember things, mostly to remember things, and just to process them. And that's how kind of Greater Things was born. A lot of those stories that I started writing when I was a junior kind of made up Greater Things, my first book. And I have forgotten your question.
No, so it was just talking about what inspired you to write.
Okay.
And you sort of answered that really to an extent, and you found a passion for it and didn't know that, you know, you weren't necessarily good at that to an extent. So you've got 3 books out at the moment. You have got a new one coming out, but we'll talk about maybe the 3 that you've already got out there, and then move on to obviously the new and exciting one. So what was the first book, and what's it about?
So Greater Things is the first book, where it starts the weekend before my accident, my jet ski accident, where I meet this boy I have a really big crush on. And then the next weekend we go to Lake Aston, to the lake. And he's the one who's driving the other jet ski that ends up hitting me. So, you know, crush is gone, friend is dead, I'm paralyzed, all this stuff. And then so it takes me from the very beginning until I get out of college. So it's, you know, me struggling to sit up long enough to brush my teeth, all the way to I'm graduating high school and going to college. And in between, in there is a bunch of struggle, but then a bunch of like me relearning how to do stuff. That's why I'm doing my first marathon. I'm discovering adaptive sports. I'm trying new things, all from the perspective of a wheelchair. So it's pretty much all the things that you would do, that anyone would do, but just with a different take on it. And I'm a person that's very like, I want to add humor in anything that I can. So it's not like a sad book. Because my perspective, I was young and I was still learning this stuff. So I'm kind of like figuring it out, but in a very, not very kid way, but in a kid way, in like like not a mature way either. It's fun. I put a fun twist on it, but it's also a very traumatic story. And so that's Greater Things, my first book. And so when Greater Things was being published, I quit my job at a bank a month before it came out, just kind of saying, I'm going to be an author now. I don't want to work at a bank anymore. It's boring. It's not interesting. Let's do this. So about 3 months after Greater Things came out, money was starting to stop coming, because people buy the book and they don't buy it again. So I said, what is something that I do a lot of, that I know a lot about, that I can write another book about? Because it's either write another book or get a job or get work. So the answer was dating, going on first dates, going on bad first dates. So my second book is called Date Me. That's a comic book about dating in a wheelchair. So I updated my profile. I went on 32 dates in 2.5 months, which is absolutely bonkers. That's like a lunch date, a dinner date on the same day, 4 dates a week, 4 different guys. And I made a comic about them. Most of them, I made a comic about them and didn't talk to them ever again, because the date went bad. Boys are rude and horny and don't know. Apparently, not all of them, but apparently don't know how to act around a wheelchair. It makes them very uncomfortable, apparently. And that's when I kind of learned that my wheelchair is a bigger deal than I thought. It takes people, it's like something that people had to accept at the time of dating, which I didn't realize that, because I'm like, I'm just a normal girl, I'm just sitting down, but apparently not. So anyway, I made light of it. That's something that everyone does and everyone kind of knows about dating, how hard dating is, but then the perspective of a wheelchair. So I kind of add some humor to it, add some humor to a bad situation. And that was actually turned into a TV show, and the first episode is on YouTube if you search Date Me. That's really fun, and I got confronted a couple times after it came out, but it's fine, because everything I said was truthful.
That's crazy, really, that you've had the accident. You've then decided to obviously write a book about the experience. And something the Stoics say is that if you can laugh at yourself, you'll never find out things to laugh at. And I think it's really good that you can have that sort of viewpoint. To obviously it is a serious situation, and I'm sure there's emotions etc. in the book, but also to have a light humor on that, which is great. And then obviously the second book, the date me stuff. I'm sure that's quite hilarious.
It's fun.
So from that dating, is that where you found your husband, or was that a separate thing?
That was lessons learned. If I was trying to teach a lesson, I could pull a lesson out there. I did not meet my husband with that experiment, we're going to call it. I met my husband at the end of that, and I met him once I had deleted the app, and I met him at church. So I met him the traditional way, at church, the best place to meet him, which I didn't think. I thought boys at church, like, they're all weird, or they're all married, or they're all taken. But then, my husband wasn't, and I found him there. So, the lesson could go to church, get off the apps, but
it tends to be the way, though, doesn't it? If you've got something in common with someone, or people go into a certain situation, they are more likely to be like that, if that makes sense. So obviously, if you're going to church, someone's more likely to be religious and have moral beliefs and ethics, etc. Do you find that you've noticed, or you now have people in your life that are more down to earth, more real in terms of their intentions than maybe when you were 14, going to the prom, etc.? Do you think there's a real difference there now in terms of real friends versus deal friends?
So this is another great thing about my wheelchair, because, well, great, hard at the beginning, but great. But before when I was hurt, when I was in 9th grade, before my accident, I was surrounded by friends. I had a ton of friends because it was easy to be my friend because I was an able-bodied person, you know, whatever, I'm fun to be around. But then after my accident, I was learning how to show up in public in the social setting in a wheelchair. So I was relearning everything. And my friends, the people around me, were learning how to be around me in a wheelchair in a social setting. We were all just kind of figuring it out. And that's why I think that's why I lost a lot of friends after my accident, because I'm just like this girl with this hard story, as like, why, like, choosing that versus like, I'm gonna go like to the mall with my friends and then go to prom, you know. It's so that's how I think it's weeded it out, which was very hard at first. But now, especially now, years later, it's one of the greatest things because the people that are around me, it's not as much as like she's hard to be around because I've figured myself out and I'm, you know, I'm good now. But the people around me are solid. Like, they're around me because they want to be around me, and like I don't like take a lot of effort now, but I kind of weeded it out to a point of like I would rather have close, good, solid friends than a bunch of like, you know, acquaintances and loop-de-loop friends. So that weeded out a lot with friends, and then also with dating, big time, because as you'll see in the Date Me book, most boys are just, you know, don't want anything to do with it, and I'm like, well, I don't want anything to do with you either because you're rude, or like you're here for the wrong like the different reasons than I thought. It just weeds them out. My wheelchair just weeds people out. And it's great. It's fine because I got my core friends.
So it filters out the superficial people, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so what about the third book then? So we've obviously got the story of what happened to the dating comedy book, let's say,
Yeah,
that obviously you've learned a lot of lessons from. And then what about the third book then? How does the third book differ?
yeah. So the third book is called A Million Suns, and the whole theme of the book is like finding my passions I lost with my accident. So a big one for me was sports. Um, I've done sports ever since I was a small kid, and they're very much. It's more than just sports. It's very much like my outlet, and it's like how I exercise my body and show up for myself. But then I, you know, thought I lost that. And I'm trying to find I'm trying to find my passions again. So we have a bunch of adaptive sports that I try, which again, we have a humorous take on all of them because I'm figuring out stuff like adaptive lacrosse, where I'm like, of course I'll love this because I loved it before my accident. And then I go and I realize I'm super bad at it, and you know, it's terrible, and people hitting me in the face with their stick, etc. There's just a funny take on it. So it's finding my passions, and then it's also that's where I met my husband. We have a little bit of a story of how we met in church, and that sorry, excuse me, that story is in the book, and so call him one of my passions. And it's kind of like finding myself again is the theme, but it's funny and it's entertaining and it's a good read. It's a good book.
So you've obviously those three are already out on sale. So you're an illustrator as well, aren't you? So is that done through
Mhm.
that publishing company as well?
Yes, Morgan James Publishing.
And what does that company do, and how does that differ from maybe a more traditional publisher?
So that is a publishing company, and we are hybrid publishers versus traditional, which is there's some differences in there of like benefits for the author. And I was actually, when I was pitching my third book to them, my publisher, the owner of the company, said, "What are you doing like for work?" And I said, "Actually, I tell people that I work for Morgan James. I hope that's okay because I'm an author here." And he says, "You know, okay, well, do you want to actually work for Morgan James?" And I said, "Yeah." So that's when I started to. I love this company so much. I love them. They changed my life, and the people that work there. It's a small publishing company, so the people that work there are very close, and we look out for each other, and it's like a family. I feel like every company says that, but you know, it's true in our case. So he said, "Do you want to work here?" So I actually work as a literary agent for Morgan James. So I'm stuck on them, and I don't ever want to go anywhere else because they've done me right so far.
So you're working as an illustrator. How do you get time to write your most recent book then? Do you do a page a day, as I sort of tend to do, where I break it down into smaller chunks when I write a book, or are you someone who really likes to sit down for 5-10 hours at a time and sort of chug through it?
I wish I had the discipline to have a schedule. Because people like, I wake up at 5 o'clock every morning and write for hours because that's when my brain works. But I've never been able to do that. And when I get really get into the book, I'm working for 3-4 hours a day, just sitting there, take a break, come back for a couple more hours. It's so much fun. That's the best part about writing the book, is the writing process. And it's something that I make time for. And when I'm really into it, it's kind of like everything in my life falls around my writing, because it's just what I love to do so much. And I'm actually working on this big project that's going to become something, which is the book. And so I actually just recently got out of that process, because I submitted my book, but I miss it a lot. And it's awesome. It's the best part.
So what's that book about then? How does that differ from the previous three? If you just want to explain what it's about for the guests.
So my fourth book is a fiction, and I'm very excited. My first fiction, it's kind of like I got to a point where I ran out of things, I ran out of things that I'm doing in my life that people would want to read about. So I'm like, where do I go next? I guess I'll try fiction. And then I tried it and I loved it. So this is good. So I have 12 inanimate objects. We have an avocado, a pen, a pumpkin, a tampon, a bath towel, a toothpaste, all this stuff. And they all have personalities. They have past, present, future. They have dreams, aspirations, names, a different personality per object, of course. And they all belong to the same person, whose name is Madison. And they're telling their story from their perspective of like how they're seeing life. The pumpkin, for example, we go through her, she's in the patch first until she's like chosen and she's carved. And so you're reading like the excruciation of her being carved and then sitting on the stoop and not knowing, etc. And it's really fun and it's entertaining and it's funny. And my goal was to make you look at things and see things through a different perspective. Like, you're writing with your pen and you're like, I wonder, is my pen reading what I'm writing? Is he or she like processing what I'm doing? Or how does it look? How does he look? Well, it's a he in the book, but how does he look when how does he feel when I'm writing with them, etc. His ink runs out, and so they all belong to the same person, Madison. And you find out, you're kind of learning her story through the pens and through the objects and through her journal articles. So she's diagnosed with something, she does something in the end. She has a lot going on in her life. She's going through a breakup, her first breakup as an adult. So I was able to channel a lot of that during my first breakup. So I'm kind of like, it's not nonfiction, it's definitely fiction, but there are a lot of nonfiction elements in Madison's breakup and Madison's emotions. And I'm able to live that through the objects and through her journal articles. It was just a lot of fun. And it's cool because I can look at things, I can say, oh, my bath towel's name is, Trisha, and this is what she's feeling. And I can just kind of reflect on those stories that I've written and then say, I can think of every element of the experience of this object and put it in my stories.
Well, it's good that so it sounds to me like you're trying to establish some empathy with things outside of yourself, and also
Yes.
assume that everything has consciousness. So as you said, the pen that's being written with, does that read the story? Does it feel the movement around? Pumpkin, as you said, when it's cut, when it's being gouged for Halloween, how does that make it feel, etc., and sort of paraded in front of the house? So the inspiration, obviously, you mentioned that yes, it's fiction, but you've taken some of your own experience. I mean, that's normal, isn't it? That you take inspiration from something that's happened to you and put that into a fictional story. What specific parts of your story have inspired you in this particular fiction novel?
It's just a level. Some objects love what they're doing, and some objects don't love what they're doing. The tampon, for example, loves what she's doing, and she's very driven toward what she thinks her purpose is. But the pumpkin, hates it. The mug hates. Madison drinks a lot of hot tea, and the mug hates being scorched with the tea. So it's just a level of let's see, I'm using extreme words here, but a level of suffering and a level of joy that I can kind of connect to, because I've had a lot of joy and some suffering, I guess a lot of suffering in my life too. So I can just connect with those feelings a lot better and a lot stronger. And then flip it over to Madison's part of the story, where you're going back to her. She has the suffering of a first breakup and moving out on her own, during this breakup, which is exactly what I did. And moving out in the middle of like a terrible breakup with my ex-boyfriend. And so that's kind of going on at the same time as, like, the tampon's happy about her job and the mug is hating his job, and all that stuff. So I think my story is reflected in these stories, just the connection I can have with the emotions of the objects and her, Madison.
I think it's amazing that if you look at 15, I think it was 15 or 17 years ago, wasn't it, your accident? That
17.
17 years that you, at that point, were thinking, well, how am I going to move? How am I going to go to the toilet, etc.? And the wishes you had then, so I just want to be able to move around. I just want to be able to be loved, etc. If we fast forward 17 years, you've got all the things that you wished for and more, which I think is quite remarkable, really. Was there any point in that time frame where you lost hope, even for a short time? I can see that you're quite a positive person, which I love, and you are definitely a glass half full kind of person, which is admirable. But were there any points that you were under the cosh for even a small period of time, and even that, and if so, how did you overcome that thought process?
So I was hurt, like I said, sophomore of high school was when I was going back. And when I was in high school, I didn't really know. In high school, the answer is no, because I was doing all this, I was working for all this stuff, and I was just so busy with my rehab and with school and all this stuff that I didn't really soak in, I guess, didn't really sink in what my situation was. I was also surrounded by friends that I already had and that I had already made. So that was easy. I didn't have to make a whole lot of new friends. So no, until I was in high school. And then in college, I went to college, and it's, I'm starting from scratch. I'm seeing these people know me from no other form than Kristin in the wheelchair. So very much I'm like the girl in the wheelchair, and unless I make another name for myself. And I wasn't, especially freshman year, I didn't go to parties. I didn't like do all the college things, because I was, working out in the middle of classes, and I'm just not really a party person. So the freshman year of college was probably the hardest of my life, because I was learning myself from a different perspective, from the perspective of all these strangers who didn't know me and didn't have any reason to love me. And so my disability and my difference kind of sunk in for the first time. And so that was really hard, but I never got to the point where I lost hope. When I woke up, ever since I was a kid, and ever since I woke up from my coma, I'm very surrounded by a close family, who said to me, this is what happened, but this is what could have happened. This is what could have happened, but this is what God has blessed you with, and this is what you are. This is all the stuff you have to be thankful for. So I look looking at myself through that perspective. And I say, especially when I went to California and I'm working out for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and on the mat right next to me to move my legs, and the mat right next to me is somebody who's working out equally as hard, to move their fingers, and I can very easily do that. So it puts things into perspective, and I was very focused on how fortunate I am and how much I have, that it's kind of hard to feel bad for myself, because then I can look at my friend who, is a quad and can't, cough.
I think it comes down to gratitude, doesn't it, for like the blessings that you've got, because everything you've got, someone else is jealous of. Like you've got books out, someone else wants to write a book and they haven't got that. Someone wants to be an illustrator, someone wants to get married and have kids with another on their way or whatever. So so there's always something that we can be grateful for as individuals, and I think it's good to have that sort of mindset. But if let's say that everything that we go through develops our mindset, doesn't it? So what happens today will change your mindset for tomorrow, and vice versa. It's probably quite a difficult question to answer, but how do you feel that your pre-accident self would have judged your current self at that time, if that makes sense? Because obviously before everything happened, you would have had a slightly different view on things. How do you think that judgment would have occurred, and what do you think that judgment would have shown?
I think difficult question, but I have a quick answer because it's also an easy one. I think that it would come from what I've heard. I think pre-accident Kristin would say what I've heard so many people say of, oh, I could never do that, or like, that's so hard, that's too much for me, or I could never do, or I could never be like that, I could never have that perspective, because I don't really know what I'm able to do until I have to do it, until I'm forced, until my hand is forced, and then all these things influence me, like my family and my faith in God and my community around me, and then I say, this is what I can actually do, I can keep going. But if you just step back and you look at my situation and say, she lost all this stuff, her life is flipped upside down, I could never do that, that's too much. So I think that's what pre-Kristin would say. But then it happens, and then as it happens, I'm like, wait, this is like, I'm doing this because in my mind I have to do it, there's no other choice, and I don't give myself another choice, because like I said before, if I want to be happy, if I want to start owning my own life, then this is what I have to do. So I don't really have a choice to do it, and I know
Yeah.
that's a mindset that I pushed on myself.
It's a couple of sort of stoic phrases come to mind, that life's a tragedy, but we must not forget to sing in the lifeboats. I think that you've got that sort of attitude where you should always, regardless of what happens, be positive, be optimistic. And the other, from what you've said, is that a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor man perfected without trials. And from what you've said there, you're basically saying that judgment, or what people have said to you, is that I could never go through that. But what you're saying is that actually going through that makes you ready for it. Is that what you're trying to suggest?
Yeah. And you don't know what you can do until you have to do it, until you're pushed into it. And so I would say, back to pre-accident Kristin, I would say, yes, you can. Like, why are you cutting yourself off at the knees and saying I could never do that, and just kind of assuming you can't, when why don't you try? Or I'm not saying why don't you try being paralyzed, but I'm saying, like, why would you say you could never do that? Because you don't know what you're capable of, much more than I ever thought that I would be able to be.
Do you think that you can use that mentality in like a forward thinking perspective of, for example, people always say the time isn't right, I'm waiting for X, Y, Z to happen. Could you transfer that perspective to that example and say, well, actually, how do you know if you're going to be ready? How do you know if it's going to be the right time without actually undertaking that challenge now?
Yes, and that's why I've tried so many things after my accident. That's why I've tried so many things, and I have very much like a don't say no. Kristin, do you want to go rappelling off? Like, Kristin, you're paralyzed. Do you want to go rappelling off the side of a building in Virginia Beach? And I'm like, yeah, okay, that'd be great. Let's try it. Because it's very much like, I don't know what I could love. I don't know what is going to form me and is going to give me some kind of lesson. That story isn't a million suns, by the way. But I don't know what I'm going to get out of this experience. So why not try it, as long as it's reasonable and safe? Why not try it and see what I can extract from this either crazy bad or crazy good experience, and take that with me through life? And it's a very much like a don't sell myself short. Like, try all these things, because I could find a passion. Like running, for example. I used to hate to run. Before my accident, I was like the 16-minute mile person, last in my gym class. Used to hate to run. And now, if you told me back then that, one day you're going to do one marathon, much less 16 marathons, I'd be like, no, no, like I couldn't do that. What are you talking about? I would say that same thing of, I could never do that. But then now, riding my hand cycle, which is kind of equivalent to, which is definitely equivalent to someone running a marathon, is one of like, gives me the most joy out of everything. So I would never know unless I tried. And, I tried and I love it.
So do you think we talk ourselves out of things by looking at the negative side and having limiting beliefs, i.e., I can never do that, and as you said, sort of selling yourself short and not having the optimistic attitude, saying that actually by doing these things, although there are going to be negatives, it's going to be painful, looking at the result or actually the rising to the challenge, let's say, that we get from things. Is that what you use for motivation now, as opposed to looking at the negative side? As you said, like, you probably arms are going to be lethargic and with going jelly arms at probably 20 plus miles. Is that how you view things now and look at what you can gain from something as opposed to what you could lose, or what are the disadvantages of undertaking a challenge?
Yeah. So in the case of a marathon, I might be, hurting and I might have jelly lethargic arms, but I'm gonna have a medal. Like, but I'm gonna have a medal from the New York Marathon. My first marathon was New York. For the medal from the New York Marathon, like that's really cool. So worst case scenario, I'm gonna have this experience and it's gonna be terrible. I'm gonna hate it. But then at the end of it, I'm gonna have a story, I'm gonna have some growth. So that reminds me, saying that reminds me of my dating book. I made a rule for myself that I'm going to say yes to every date that I'm asked on. Which, if you're on a dating app and you're moderately attractive, it's very easy to get a date. It's very easy. I mean, it's very easy. So I made a rule for myself. I'm going to say yes to everyone. Excuse me. And it got to the point, especially closer to the end, of like, I don't feel like doing this. I don't like, I've gotten not abused, but like emotionally and verbally abused by these guys, all week long. I don't want to go on another date. But then my perspective turned into, well, this could be different. This guy could be different. And if he's not, then I'm gonna get a good story out of it for my book. Like I'm turning a bad situation, which was dating for me at the time, into how can I make this worthwhile? And the answer was make a book, make money off these guys being mean to me. And so it's kind of like finding a good angle on a bad situation of dating is bad, but I'm gonna get a good, like the worse they are, the meaner and ruder they are to me, then the better the story. So I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna try to make the best of it. But if it's not good, then I'll get something good out of it. And I think that's kind of a perspective that can carry to things of, I'm just gonna try stuff because why not? And if it's bad, then I'll have a good story to tell people later.
Yeah, I think you spot on there, and it's like, for example, a world championship boxer, as people would like to have that world champion boxer status, but they aren't willing to go through. They're getting punched in the face 5 times a day, 100 times a day, do 5 hour sessions every day, and do running, etc. So they are again looking at the end result, but without wanting to go through the story. I know that you studied clinical psychology. Do you think that helped you with this mindset, or is that something that you've just learned from experience?
Well, studying psychology helped me to kind of figure out how people work a little bit more, how people's minds work a little bit more, and help me kind of figure out how to not figure out, but improve my interactions with people, because I can kind of understand a little bit more where they're coming from. Psychology is just good for that in general for everyone. But for dating, I use that a little bit because it just kind of like, it helped, like studying psychology helped me kind of like have that empathy and like have that patience a little bit more, and kind of realizing how psychology also showed me how flexible and changeable the mind is. So that helped me in my rehabilitation more than I already knew, of like our brains are like, putty. We can just change them and adapt them, and it's great, and it's not easy, but it's something we can do. So just show me the possibility in my interactions with people and in my rehabilitation with myself, and just helped me in all areas, which is a cookie cutter thing to say, but it's true that it's so applicable to all parts of my life. Mm-hmm.
So what does the future look like for Kristin then? Have you got book ideas? Is it something public speaking potentially? What is your next 3 to 5 years, let's say, in an ideal scenario?
Yeah. So I love public speaking. I've done a lot of public speaking. I love reaching people with my story because I have a very powerful story with a lot of different angles that I can teach people things or motivate them or whatever. I love public speaking, so I'm always looking out for that. And Wide Awake, this fiction, my fiction that's coming out, as many objects there are in the world is how many books I can write, or how many, so there's potential for sequels. So there's definitely sequel potential in that. I'm gonna have a baby, and I don't know what my life is gonna look like, but in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, writing and speaking wise, with the baby in my arms. But who knows what it's gonna be like. It's very exciting because I'm gonna have a family now, but I fully intend to work on sequels for Wide Awake and keep public speaking wherever I can, and keep telling my story and spreading the news that life is great no matter what happens to you and no matter what your situations are.
So when are you due? When are you due?
April 28th.
So not too far then.
Not too far at all. Holy cow.
So yeah, you might be in a position where you're feeding, then the baby's gone to sleep, and you whipping out the laptop for book 5,
Exactly.
possibly.
Yeah.
So if we go back through your story, other than obviously the accident and obviously the books, etc., what were 2 other defining moments, would you say, that haven't been discussed thus far?
Defining moments in my life or in my books?
In your life, other than the books and the accident and your partner, let's say something that hasn't been discussed as yet.
Let's see. So one comes to mind very quickly is when I first wiggled my toes after that first month and a half in California. And I had, again, no feeling and no sensation from a mid torso down. And I came back after a month and a half of working out like a madman, and I wiggled my toes. And that's kind of when I said, okay, like that was like the first way to prove the doctor's wrong, of like, hey, I can get things back, and like things are possible. And I was obsessed with wiggling on my toes. Well, before that, I would just lay in bed for hours at a time, staring at my feet, I can feel them wiggling, just like you can feel them wiggling, but they weren't wiggling, which was infuriating. But I just sat there and I stared at them for hours, trying to send brain signals down to wiggle my toes. And they finally wiggled. And that was like, wow, the power of my brain, the power of keeping healthy and working out, and, saying no to the doctors who told me I can't. That was definitely defining. And then I would say, on a different perspective, when I was in college, my sophomore year of college, freshman year was tough, dark, very lonely and sad, for my own doing a little bit. But then sophomore year of college, when I started to become Kristin again, I started to make friends and interact, and kind of like I had it figured out. Honestly, I came back sophomore year of college, and I said, I can't do freshman year over again. Like, I'm not going to make it. That was too bad. So I joined a club. I joined the campus Bible study club, and I started to be around people who were like me, who accepted me, who, a lot of them had similar freshman years as I did. And I started to make friends again. I started to come out. So kind of that defining moment was finding myself again in what felt like an impossible situation, and kind of my personality coming out again. So that was defining moment, defining months.
I think that's really good advice, isn't it? Because if people are going through situations that they, let's say, they want to find friends, or they don't know who they are, or whatever it's going to be, if you just do things that you enjoy, so Bible study, or go and do some martial arts, or go running, or hiking, whatever it's going to be, you're going to find like-minded people regardless. So I think that's a life hack that a lot of people don't really discuss. They're like, oh, I need to go out to the pub and find friends, or where am I going to find someone who is similar to me? Well, why not try actually doing things that you enjoy, and you'll
Hmm.
probably find that you will find people who are similar to you. You know, whether it's football team, you know, same support, as I said, martial arts, Bible study, dancing, you know, go salsa dancing, whatever it's going to be. And if you've got more than one interest, dogs, another one, what you'll tend to find is you'll find friends in all the areas. You will build a
Hmm.
network, and maybe you'll bring friends together. And that's how you can maybe create your own little life. Is that something that you found from, as you said, going to Bible study and doing the marathons and public speaking, etc.? Do you find that just living to your interests has actually helped you find um, um, happiness in those areas?
Yes, so that's kind of also, to take that one step further, taking care of myself, doing what I need to do to be happy, which in my case was Bible study and hand cycling and running in marathons and church and all that stuff. That's as a result of me being happy and me being my 100% in my place, in my comfort zone, because I'm putting myself in this comfort zone. That's where I kind of find people to surround me, and my happiness, confidence, contentment, all that stuff attracts people, versus me going in a bar and not being able to see over the counter and like being, a little uncomfortable and like dirty and like not really happy. I'm not really going to meet, because that doesn't attract people. I'm not really going to meet people in a bar, much less likely than if I go to a church and I'm comfortable enough to talk out and speak, or a marathon or whatever. So it's just taking care of yourself, and doing what makes you happy, and then people will come around. People will come to you. People will be attracted to your energy, but taking care of yourself first.
So like attracts like in that scenario.
Yes. Hmm.
So so have you got any new hobbies that you're undertaking at the moment, or is it still the same few that you found after you obviously came out of the coma and got better?
Hmm. Well, fencing is relatively new. I just started that in 2020, and I've been to 4 North American Cups around the country, and I've gotten medals at all of them. I've been to Colorado for the Olympic Training Center and trained for 2 weeks, 2 different years. So that's been a really fun thing that I've made a lot of friends through that, because it's something that I love and I'm happy. And then I have my hand cycling, and I haven't gotten any new hobbies just because I have a baby coming. And what I have, like, but my things that I have now, my hobbies that I have now, are very filling to me. And yes, like baby or not, if there's a hole, if I'm feeling like I need something else, or I need something to make me happy or fill my time or something, that I would not hesitate to look for something else. It would probably just look a little different, than going out and finding something, because I have a family. But no, I don't have any new hobbies, but I wouldn't hesitate to find one if I found a need for it. My
Well,
new
maybe,
hobby is my baby.
yeah, I was going to say, well, maybe when you've got your baby, that they'll be uh, dictated by that, maybe. But
Oh yeah.
see, so if there was one sort of core message that you would want to get out to the listeners, what would that be, and how do you feel that that message or that advice would help them change things for themselves?
Hmm. So that would definitely be, try things, and do new things and everything you can to find your happiness. Prioritize your happiness, prioritize yourself and your mental well-being, um, or else you're not going to go very far, because you're not going to be a happy person and you're going to be miserable. Is you got to take care of yourself first, so that you can show up for other people, and you can show up in the world, and who knows, inspire other people to do the same as you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, isn't it? It's that sometimes you feel, oh, I don't want to have to do this because it's going to take me 5 years or whatever. At the end of the day, it's going to be 5 years anyway in 5 years. So, if you're
Mhm.
35, you're going to be 40 in 5 years regardless. So I think it's good that you're saying that people should just go for it, find out and do things, different things that are going to help find happiness, because sometimes it's not always the things that you feel will be right for you or always right for you, are they? As you probably found out from dating thing, as an example. So if people want to find you and find your work, where is the best place for them to do that?
Okay, so this is a little wrench I'm going to throw in. So if you want it, well, KristinBeale.com is my website. So that's where you can get my articles. I write for Chris Reeve every month, twice a month. My books, my comics. You can sign up for my weekly comics. So I have weekly comics that I send out. You can sign up for them on my website or on Instagram at Greater Things Comics. They come out every week. Those are just fun little things that are on my mind, or something funny that I thought of, or that's really fun to do. And then the wrench is, if you want to find me, excuse me, my personal Instagram is Kristin Gupta. That's my married name. And that's where you can also find my comics and my articles and everything through there. And just like the personal life of Kristin, you can see plenty of pictures of my dog, I'm sure. So Kristin Gupta on Instagram for personal, Greater Things Comics, and KristinBeale.com for books and comics. And then I'll pretty soon, you can also find me in the bookstores, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Borders, etc. Pretty soon, my 4th book.
So talk to me a bit about the comics, actually, just before we sign off. So what do these daily comics entail?
I realized as I said that I hadn't mentioned it yet. So they come out every Monday on the newsletter, every Tuesday on Instagram, and it's just a new comic every month. Every week. Always 6 blocks. We have, let's see, the one that came out yesterday was how to get through a breakup. And it's just like it could be like a funny advice for it, or it could be something more serious with like a funny twist, but it's a comic, so it's always some kind of entertainment and humor. So it's just fun because it's situations and it's things that everyone goes through, but then I'm just like, I'm a constant in all the comics, my character, the girl in the wheelchair, and it's kind of just bringing it to like, hey, I go through the same things as you, or like, I look different, but I'm the same as you, and we're all going through breakups. Here are some like entertaining, fun ways to get through a breakup. So it's that's my ongoing fun project. And they're great, worth a check out.
Excellent. So one final thing is, just want to let everyone know when your book is out, because I know it's currently being published, isn't it? So what's that release date?
So it's mid-February, I believe, for books that you can order off my website, and then they'll be in bookstores in August of 23.
So a couple of weeks it's out, and then another 6 months until it's shipped out to the Barnes, etc.
Yeah, so it's available for order through my website in a couple weeks, and then bookstores in August. Yeah.
Excellent. So have you got any final words about anything?
Follow along for some fun stuff. You can follow my Instagram for some fun, or not, or read my book, or don't. But I'm happy to be able to share my story, and at the very least, check out my comics because they're fun. Or don't, but I'm happy to be able to share my story with you guys.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Kristin. It's been a pleasure. And like she said, give her a follow, get the books, sign up for the comics, and yeah, you'll be interested with what she has to say in more depth than what we've talked about today.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.